going to do this video a little different. Like I mentioned on my video on Monday, I wanted to start making some shorter videos on Saturday to release. They are not going to be anywhere near as long as our regular Monday videos, maybe 20 minutes. But I wanted to have this opportunity to make other kinds of ASMR videos. They'll probably still be literature themed to some extent. But today, we're just going to do something kind of fun. We're going to read some short stories. And these short stories are going to come out of yet another kind of nice collector's edition of Grimm's Complete Fairy Tales. I also think I'm going to do this video a little closer to soft spoken rather than a full-on whisper, just to shake things up a little bit too. But this is a very nice collector's edition of Grimm's Complete Fairy Tales. It's also part of the same collector's edition that the Odyssey and the Iliad are a part of as well. So if you have any interest in collecting, it's actually just the Barnes & Noble collector's edition, which is surprising because it's actually a very nice edition, I think. But they all have this sort of gold pages, or at least the siding of the pages. At any rate, I'm going to dig in here. I've actually been reading through this on my own time, but I thought I might share some of them with you. If you don't know who the Grimm brothers are, they were some two or three German brothers, I believe. And they lived in the 1800s, I want to say, maybe a little earlier. But they wrote a lot of fairy tales that today are probably known to us best through adaptations by Disney. For instance, I believe Cinderella is in here, but we're just going to start with the Robber Groom. Sorry, the Robber Bridegroom. I had to read that a couple times to get that right in my head. There was once on a time a miller who had a beautiful daughter, and as she was grown up, he wished that she was provided for and well married. He thought, if any good suitor comes and asks for her, I will give her to him. Not long afterwards, a suitor came who appeared to be very rich, and as the miller had no fault to find with him, he promised his daughter to him. The maiden, however, did not like him quite so much as a girl should like the man to whom she is engaged, and had no confidence in him. Whenever she saw him or thought of him, she felt a secret horror. Once he said to her, "Thou art my betrothed, and yet thou hast never once paid me a visit." The maiden replied, "I know not where thy house is." Then said the bridegroom, "My house is out there in the dark forest." She tried to excuse herself and said she could not find the way there. The bridegroom said, "Next Sunday thou must come out there to meet me. I have already invited the guests, and I will strew ashes in order that thou mayst find thy way through the forest." When Sunday came and the maiden had to set out on her way, she became very uneasy. She herself knew not exactly why, and to mark her way she filled both her pockets full of peas and lentils. Ashes were strewn at the entrance of the forest, and these she followed, but at every step she threw a couple of peas on the ground. She walked almost the whole day until she reached the middle of the forest, where it was the darkest, and there stood a solitary house, which she did not like, for it looked so dark and dismal. She went inside it, but no one was within, and the most absolute stillness reigned. Suddenly a voice cried, turn back, young maiden dear, 'tis a murderer's house you enter here." The maiden looked up and saw that the voice came from a bird which was hanging in a cage on the wall. Again it cried, turn back, young maiden dear, 'tis a murderer's house you enter here." Then the young maiden went on farther from one room to another, and walked through the whole house, but it was entirely empty, and not one human being was to be found. At last she came to the cellar, and there sat an extremely aged woman, whose head shook constantly. "Can you not tell me," said the maiden, "if my betrothed lives here?" "Alas, poor child," replied the old woman, "whither hast thou come? Thou art in a murderer's den. Thou thinkest thou art a bride soon to be married, but thou wilt keep thy wedding with death. Look, I have been forced to put a great kettle on there with water in it, and when they have thee in their power, they will cut thee to pieces without mercy, will cook thee and eat thee, for they are eaters of human flesh. If I do not have compassion on thee and save thee, thou art lost." Thereupon the old woman led her behind a great hogshead, where she could not be seen. "Be as still as a mouse," said she. "Do not make a sound or move, or all will be over with thee. At night, when the robbers are asleep, we will escape. I have long waited for an opportunity." Hardly was this done, than the godless crew came home. They dragged with them another young girl. They were drunk and paid no heed to her screams and lamentations. They gave her wine to drink, 3 glasses full, 1 glass of white wine, 1 glass of red, and a glass of yellow, and with this her heart burst in twain. Thereupon they tore off her delicate raiment, laid her on a table, cut her beautiful body in pieces, and strewed salt thereon. The poor bride behind the cask trembled and shook, for she saw right well what fate the robbers had destined for her. One of them noticed a gold ring on the little finger of the murdered girl, and as it would not come off at once, he took an axe and cut the finger off. But it sprang up in the air away over the cask and fell straight into the bride's bosom. The robber took a candle and wanted to look for it, but could not find it. Then another of them said, "Hast thou looked behind the great hogshead?" But the old woman cried, "Come and get something to eat, and leave off looking till the morning. The finger won't run away from you." Then the robbers said, "The old woman is right," and gave up their search and sat down to eat. And the old woman poured a sleeping draught into their wine, so that they soon lay down in the cellar and slept and snored. When the bride heard that, she came out from behind the hogshead and had to step over the sleepers, for they lay in rows on the ground, and great was her terror lest she should waken one of them. But God helped her, and she got safely over. The old woman went up with her, opened the doors, and they hurried out of the murderer's den with all speed in their power. The wind had blown away the strewn ashes, but the peas and lentils had sprouted and grown up, and showed them the way in the moonlight. They walked the whole night until in the morning they arrived at the mill, and then the maiden told her father exactly everything as it happened. When the day came when the wedding was to be celebrated, the bridegroom appeared, and the miller had invited all his relations and friends. As they sat at the table, each was bidden to relate something, The bride sat still and said nothing. Then said the bridegroom to the bride, "Come, my darling, dost thou know nothing? Relate something to us like the rest." She replied, "Then I will relate a dream. I was walking alone through a wood, and at last I came to a house in which no living soul was, but on the wall there was a bird in a cage which cried, 'Turn back, young maiden dear, 'tis a murderer's house you enter here.' And this it cried once more. My darling, I only dreamt this. Then I went through all the rooms, and they were all empty, and there was something so horrible about them. At last I went down into the cellar, and there sat a very, very old woman whose head shook. I asked her, 'Does my bridegroom live in this house?' She answered, 'Alas, poor child, thou hast got into a murderer's den. Thy bridegroom does live here, but he will hew thee in pieces and kill thee. Then he will cook thee and eat thee.' My darling, I only dreamt this." But the old woman hid me behind a great hogshead, and scarcely was I hidden when the robbers came home, dragging a maiden with them, to whom they gave 3 kinds of wine to drink, white, red, and yellow, with which her heart broke in twain. My darling, I only dreamt this. Thereupon they pulled off her pretty clothes and hewed her fair body in pieces on a table and sprinkled them with salt. My darling, I only dreamt this. And one of the robbers saw that there was still a ring on her little finger. And as it was hard to draw off, he took an axe and cut it off. But the finger sprang up in the air and sprang behind the great hogshead and fell in my bosom. And there is the finger with the ring. And with these words she drew it forth and showed it to those present. The robber, who had during this story become as pale as ashes, leapt up and wanted to escape, but the guests held him fast and delivered him over to justice. Then he and his whole troop were executed for their infamous deeds. It always makes me laugh a little bit how violent these Grimm's Brothers fairy tales can be. They are absolutely nothing like the stories that are told by Disney. In any case, I think we'll do one more, and then I think we'll be right on about 20 minutes. This one is called Old Hildebrand. Once upon a time lived a peasant and his wife, and the parson of the village had a fancy for the wife, and had wished for a long while to spend a whole day happily with her. The peasant woman, too, was quite willing. One day, therefore, he said to the woman, "Listen, my dear friend, I have now thought of a way by which we can, for once, spend a whole day happily together. I'll tell you what. On Wednesday, you must take to your bed and tell your husband you are ill, and if you only complain and act being ill properly, and go on doing so until Sunday when I have to preach, I will then say in my sermon that whosoever has at home a sick child, a sick husband, a sick wife, a sick father, a sick mother, a sick brother, or whosoever else it may be, and makes a pilgrimage to the that's a word I don't know how to pronounce. Maybe Gokerli Hill? Something like that. Gokerli Hill in Italy, where you can get a peck of laurel leaves for a kreutzer, the sick child, the sick husband, the sick wife, the sick father, or sick mother, the sick sister, or whoever else it may be, will be restored to health immediately. I will manage it, said the woman promptly. Now, therefore, on the Wednesday, the peasant woman took to her bed and complained and lamented as agreed on, and her husband did everything for her that he could think of, but nothing did her any good. And when Sunday came, the woman said, "I feel as ill as if I were going to die at once. But there is one thing I should like to do before my end. I should like to hear the parson's sermon that he is going to preach today." On that, the peasant said, "Ah, my child, do not do it. Thou mightest make thyself worse if thou wert to get up. Look, I will go to the sermon and will attend to it very carefully, and will tell thee everything the parson says." "Well," said the woman, "go then, and pay great attention, and repeat to me all that thou hearest." So the peasant went to the sermon, and the parson began to preach and said, "If any one had at home a sick child, a sick husband, a sick wife, a sick father, a sick mother, a sick sister, brother, or anyone else, and would make a pilgrimage to Göckerli Hill in Italy, where a peck of laurel leaves costs a kreutzer, the sick child, sick husband, sick wife, sick father, sick mother, sick sister, brother, or whosoever else it might be, would be restored to health instantly, and whosoever wished to undertake the journey was to go to him after the service was over, and he would give him the sack for the laurel leaves and the kreutzer." Then no one was more rejoiced than the peasant, and after the service was over he went at once to the parson, who gave him the bag for the laurel leaves and the kreutzer. After that he went home, and even at the house door he cried, "Hurrah, dear wife, it is now almost the same thing as if thou wert well. The parson has preached today that whosoever had at home a sick child, a sick husband, a sick wife, a sick father, a sick mother, a sick sister, brother, or whoever it might be, and would make a pilgrimage to Göckerli Hill in Italy, where a peck of laurel leaves cost a kreutzer, the sick child, sick husband, sick wife, sick father, sick mother, sick sister, brother, or whosoever else it was, would be cured immediately. And now I have already got the bag and the kreutzer from the parson, and will at once begin my journey, so that thou mayst get well the faster." And thereupon he went away. He was, however, hardly gone before the woman got up, and the parson was there directly. But now we will leave these two for a while, and follow the peasant, who walked on quickly without stopping in order to get the sooner to Göckerli Hill. And on his way he met his gossip. His gossip was an egg merchant, and was just coming from the market where he had sold his eggs. "May you be blessed," said the gossip. "Where are you off to so fast?" "To all eternity, my friend," said the peasant. "My wife is ill, and I have been today to hear the parson's sermon, and he preached that if anyone had in his house a sick child, a sick husband, a sick wife, a sick father, a sick mother, a sick sister, brother, or anyone else, and made a pilgrimage to the Göckerli Hill in Italy, where a peck of laurel leaves costs a kreutzer, the sick child, the sick husband, the sick wife, the sick father, the sick mother, the sick sister, brother, or whosoever else it was, would be cured immediately. And so I have got the bag for the laurel leaves and the kreutzer from the parson, and now I am beginning my pilgrimage." "But listen, gossip," said the egg merchant to the peasant. "Are you then stupid enough to believe such a thing as that? Don't you know what it means? The parson wants to spend a whole day alone with your wife in peace, so he has given you this job to do to get you out of the way." "My word," said the peasant. "How I'd like to know if that's true." "Come then," said the gossip. "I'll tell you what to do. Get into my egg basket and I will carry you home, and then you will see for yourself." So that was settled, and the gossip put the peasant into his egg basket and carried him home. When they got to the house, hurrah! But all was going merry there. The woman had already had nearly everything killed that was in the farmyard and had made pancakes, and the parson was there and had brought his fiddle with him. The gossip knocked at the door, and the woman asked who was there. "It is I, gossip," said the egg merchant. "Give me shelter this night. I have not sold my eggs at the market, so now I have to carry them home again, and they are so heavy that I shall never be able to do it, for it is already dark." "Indeed, my friend," said the woman, "thou comest at a very inconvenient time for me, but as thou art here, it can't be helped. Come in and take a seat there on the bench by the stove." Then she placed the gossip in the basket where he carried on his back on the bench by the stove. The parson, however, and the woman were as merry as possible. At length the parson said, "Listen, my dear friend, thou canst sing beautifully. Sing something to me." "Oh," said the woman, "I cannot sing now. In my young days, indeed, I could sing well enough, but that's all over now." "Come," said the parson once more, "do sing some little song." On that the woman began and sang, "I've sent my husband away from me to the Gockerly Hill in Italy." Thereupon the parson sang, "I wish 'twas a year before he come back. I'd never ask him for the laurel leaf sack." Hallelujah. Then the gossip, who was in the background, began to sing, but I ought to tell you the peasant was called Hildebrand. So the gossip sang, "What art thou doing, my Hildebrand dear, there on the bench by the stove so near?" Hallelujah. And then the peasant sang from his basket, "All singing I ever shall hate from this day." And he got out of the basket and cudgeled the parson out of the house. I think a cudgel was like a, I don't even know, kind of like a hammer almost, but I'm not sure. In any case, I hope you enjoyed this shorter ASMR video. Like I said, this book is not going to replace the long videos on Monday. Monday is going to be the Iliad. I really have enjoyed it and I want to continue it for now. But on Saturdays, I'm going to try to do something shorter like this, either reading a story or making some other kind of ASMR video in a soft spoken voice rather than a full-on whisper. So if you like this this format, this kind of alternating of videos on Saturday and Monday, give us a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already. We're a pretty quickly growing community. We've gotten to nearly 100 subscribers in less than a couple of weeks, so it's been a really great ride. I love reading your comments and replying to them, so please leave me a message if you and comment below what your favorite Grimm's fairy tale is, if you have one, or maybe just your favorite fairy tale in general from when you were a kid. I personally was a big fan of Beauty and the Beast, the Disney version at the time. I haven't read the actual version, so maybe it's in here somewhere, I'm not sure. In any case, I hope you all have a great rest of your night, that you sleep well, and I hope you have had a happy new year so far.